Hello and welcome to Destination Draft Day. We are welcoming you on this beautiful Friday. Hopefully, it's beautiful for you. I guess it changes all over the country, but we are here. Michael Rockman, Brian Salsa. We have a lot on our plate today. We are talking about the San Francisco 49ers and the Los Angeles Chargers, two teams that have plenty of injury history to discuss, so we'll have a lot to talk about. But first, Brian, how are you doing today?
I'm doing great, as always. Friday afternoon, no better way to end the week than here with you. We miss Nick, but the show must go on.
Of course, and Nick is unfortunately not going to be here. He's had a little bit of a busy work schedule, so me and Brian are going to try to carry the show. Without Nick, we know it's tough, but hopefully you guys stick around for us. So first and foremost, we're going to dive right into the San Francisco 49ers. And obviously, 2 years ago, went to the Super Bowl, lost to the Chiefs. This year, a lot of high expectations, but things kind of fell apart at the seams. Plenty of players getting injured. Jimmy Garoppolo, George Kittle were two major ones. There was missed time with Deebo Samuel. And then on the defensive side of things, guys like Nick Bosa were missing so much time that just hurt this team overall. Obviously, they still put together a formidable season, but they are definitely having higher expectations in the area. What do you think the path back to the Super Bowl is for the 49ers?
Yeah, for me, it's number one, health. We say that with a lot of teams, but I think it's pretty fair to say that last year the Niners on both sides of the ball had more injuries than the average team, and it really started, I think it might have started in training camp, to be honest with you, but it was really early in the season, so get healthy. And they have to address the cornerback situation. They have a couple of key guys, Jason Verrett, Kwan Williams, that are free agents. So, I think they probably have to solidify what they're going to do in the defensive backfield. And it looks like the quarterback situation is going to stay how it is for now. I would actually ask you if you think the path to the playoffs for them is maybe surprising everyone, taking some of those day three picks that they have a ton of them, and trying to package some of those into, maybe moving up or something like that. But I don't know if they're a playoff team otherwise.
I do like the 49ers, and I think with Kyle Shanahan, they're always going to be effective on offense, looking at just how competitive they were, even with a guy like Nick Mullins and CJ Beathard at QB. Right. It says a lot. So getting Jimmy Garoppolo is huge, and John Lynch has come out and said he expects Jimmy to be the starting quarterback in 2021, in 2022, obviously, for that 21-22 season. But I think what I kind of got from it is they expect him to still be on roster and be the starter, but I don't feel like this just means that he's going to be their long-term answer. So we look at this mock draft that I have written up for them, and they're able to sit at 12 and get Trey Lance. We see it all the time with mock drafts. These QBs are overprojected in a sense. You look at, the year Dwayne Haskins was drafted. No one expected him to fall all the way to Washington. You look at other situations, such as Paxton Lynch falling to the Denver Broncos, or even last year when Jordan Love fell all the way to Green Bay. These things just don't happen the way a lot of these mock drafts have it. The QBs are going to fall a little bit. Even at 12, I'm not sure that the 49ers will be able to get it for certain, just because, they'll probably be very well known to be wanting a quarterback if they do. So teams are going to try to jump to that number 11 or maybe number 7 even for picks. And that's why I think that, 49ers, if Trey Lance is there, if Trey Lance falls, you pick him. And yes, you keep Jimmy Garoppolo on roster, you keep him as a starter, but you ideally are working with Trey Lance and making what can hopefully become your next starting QB for not just next year, but the next 15 years after next year. And Jimmy's a great QB. I think he's perfectly fine as a starter in this league, but I think what you get from him is what you know already, and that's an average level starter, someone who can win you games, but he's not going to do it himself. He needs a strong cast around him, and that's why I think if the 49ers get a chance at a guy like Trey Lance, why not take the swing? Because the biggest issue for the 49ers last year was health. The team is there. So if you can get a superstar QB in this class, and I'm not saying Trey Lance is for sure a superstar, but I think the ceiling is definitely there. then I think you have to make the move. And for the 49ers, I think this is absolutely the situation that you go with. Trey Lance is someone that I just absolutely value. If I were going for a shock pick, I've talked with a lot of 49er fans and they hate me for this idea, but I legitimately think it's an option on the table. Look out for Kyle Pitts out of Florida to be the pick here, because the 49ers have been heavily pursuing tight ends in the free agency cycles and the trade rumors. And they went and got Jordan Reed last year. He wasn't able to really stay healthy. He didn't produce as well as the Jordan Reed of old. There's talks that they would maybe pursue an Evan Ingram type. But if they're there at 12, Kyle Pitts is on the board, I could easily see Kyle Shanahan saying, well, that's just unfair to have Kittle and Pitts in the tight end slots for us, and really riding with that. You know, you have a good receiving core with Kendrick Bourne, Deebo Samuel, Brandon Ayuk, obviously. But if you can add a guy like Kyle Pitts, that'd be very impressive. So while I maybe mock it a little bit to my friends and try to just ruffle their feathers, I legitimately do think it's an option on the table if they are passing over the quarterback position. But in regards to this mock draft, in the second round, I have him going Patrick Jones the second out of Pittsburgh. I think Dee Ford is probably going to be back on this roster. I understand cutting him creates a lot of space, but if you can have him back and healthy, that's huge. You know, I think Hyder's gone, so bringing in Nick Bosa healthy, Dee Ford healthy, and then having Patrick Jones the second as your third guy in line, hopefully taking that spot from Dee Ford, then you are absolutely getting some presence on your defensive end spots. Patrick Jones needs to develop as a pass rusher. He's a ferocious rusher, but there's still so much refinement that needs to be done in his game. If he can come into the situation where he can rotate in, already have his athleticism and run stuffing ability, then that's huge. And as he develops, he could potentially become one of the best edge rushers in this class. I love him. I love his game. And I think he's definitely one of the top guys that I would value at the defensive end spot. In the third round, we finally get some secondary coming into San Francisco. Ifeatu Melifonwu. If the name sounds familiar to you, it's because Obi Melifonwu, his older brother, had been a first-round pick in the past. Melifonwu is a physical corner, athletic, very much so. Probably not as athletic as his brother Obi, but still a good athlete. I think the issue is, as strong as he is, there's still some times where he plays soft. So he needs to get that vicious mindset, get some mentality in him where he's willing to go up and rough up some receivers. And I think with that, in a situation like San Francisco's, you could definitely see him developing and becoming a strong corner. They already have some talent in there. I think they get Verrett back. They definitely bring Mosley back. And, you know, I think they have Witherspoon on roster too. So Melifonwu may not be seeing the field a lot, but I do think that he could develop into a starting corner. He has a size that would be great for San Francisco and really be huge for them in the future. In the fourth round, we go with Jack Anderson out of Texas Tech. Looking at this guy, I think he offers versatility to play all three spots on the line: tackle, guard, and center. At the Senior Bowl, he made snaps, and you know he was primarily guard and tackle at Texas Tech. I think mostly you want him to be a guard competing with a guy like Brunskill, but if he moves into that center spot and takes Richburg's spot, that's fine as well. You know, letting him be a versatile option on the offensive line is absolutely huge. The 49ers were missing plenty of talent on the offensive line throughout the year. I think Richburg had injuries to where they had three different centers play during the course of the season. So you want to get some guys that are able to stick around on the offensive line and really provide a sense of dependability for playing and making sure that they'll be active and ready on game day. In the fifth round, I go with Tony Fields second out of West Virginia, 6'1", 220 pounds. He kind of fits that will linebacker mold that the 49ers seem to really love. I don't know that you're bringing in Fields to start, but I do think that him with some of the other young talent on the roster makes it to where there's competition at the linebacker spot, and may the best man win, and I think you're going to be fine regardless. With the next fifth round pick, I have him going Walker Little out of Stanford, offensive tackle that has a lot of hype around him because he's a great athlete. He has a very nice frame, and, you know, just draft analysts love him. I think he could be someone that goes a lot higher than maybe this pick, but for me personally, I felt like in my evaluation, I was not as high on the guy. I know a lot of the people that I talked to felt similarly. So I think he could fall a little bit. Looking at what San Francisco needs, a tackle with plenty of potential could be a great get here in that 5th round. Trent Williams is someone that the ideal situation is bringing him back. So having a young tackle hopefully under him while you extend Trent Williams to maybe a 2-3 year deal would be absolutely huge for the 49ers. And if he can develop into a starting spot eventually, then that would be great because him and McGlinchey could hold down the spots for years to come. And one more 5th round pick. The 49ers get Ashari Crosswell, safety out of Arizona State. He's physical, he's athletic, and he moves around the field very well. I think he is someone that could be a surprise day 3 pick that is an immediate contributor. I really like his game, and I think with some proper landing spot, a spot where he is given both a good coaching staff and a good opportunity to play, he could be a surprise in this class. In the 6th round, looking at cornerback Cameron Bynum out of California. One more dip into the cornerback pool for the 49ers in this draft. I think Bynum is a pretty solid 6 foot, 190-pound corner that is able to play the outside pretty well. Verrett is injury prone. So, depending on him to be your starter right away is going to be risky. So you want to bring in some depth. Obviously, Melifonwu is your ideal guy to step up if you need that 3rd corner in rotation, but having another option like Bynum in the rotation fills out that cornerback room and really provides you guys with a deeper availability of talent. And then for the 7th round, I have him going running back Brandon Knox. You know the deal with the 49ers. They don't value picking running backs high, but they'll still get guys that are going to give you 100 yards anytime you give them 18 carries. So Brandon Knox is someone that I really enjoy. I think he's a physical runner, does well working north and south, but I think he can also juke around a little bit too. Really a big fan of his. And then with the last pick for the 49ers, I have him going Pro Wells, tight end out of TCU. We talked about it. I think that they would love an athletic tight end. While Pro Wells probably doesn't fill in that role, I think he is someone that could developmentally become that tight end too if he really takes the next step. And we have a comment from the comment section. Pro Wells and Kittle, new dynamic duo. Absolutely. We like Pro Wells' game. I think he's an impressive guy for a day 3 pick. And hopefully in the right landing spot, he can succeed in the NFL. So, Brian, obviously from a roster standpoint, the 49ers have needs, but they may not have a lot of guys that will be immediate starters when drafted. And I think that's kind of what we did here for my mock draft. So what do you think of this draft, and do you think there is a better way to approach it?
No, because this is a team that can probably address most of their biggest holes in free agency. I mentioned before, they have 2 cornerbacks in K'Waun Williams and Jason Verrett, who are free agents. They can conceivably bring both of those guys back and Trent Williams without even having to think about cutting D Ford, and they don't really have any enormous holes. So I think the sort of plan of go for depth, get ready for the future when our guys are inevitably not here anymore is fine. If they decide not to go with the quarterback at 12, because they might not, even if you don't think it would be that surprising, they probably go defense. Maybe they take one of those edge rushers that can go opposite Bosa, because even if they keep D Ford, he's not going to be here forever. So I could see them doing that early on. But no, other than that, I'm all right.
Yeah, and there's plenty of options, even aside from the spicy pitch that I had at Pitts. Guys like J.C. Horn, guys like Gregory Rousseau, I think are definitely in play for the 49ers here and could be great picks at the 12th spot. So now we're going to take a look at the roster for the 49ers. We're looking at the offense, and you're seeing a lot of 49er uniforms in this. There's nothing changing. Jimmy Garoppolo at QB, Raheem Mostert at running back, Kendrick Bourne, Brandon Ayuk, Deebo Samuel at receiver, George Kittle at tight end, Trent Williams at left tackle, Laken Tomlinson at left guard, Richburg at center, Brunskill at right guard, McGlinchey at right tackle. Getting this roster back and healthy is huge for the 49ers. I'm not saying that they get healthy, they're just automatically going to the Super Bowl, but I think if they're healthy, if they have a successful amount of games where these guys are all playing together, then I think they're definitely a playoff team. And yes, you have Trey Lance sitting behind Jimmy. So if maybe feel disappointed in Jimmy's play, you can make the switch. But looking at this roster, I think right now it's important to get some continuity, and keeping guys healthy could really result in another great run for the 49ers. So that's why most of this offense stays the same. Nick, if you're looking at this offense, what do you think is the, kind of question mark for what you want to see out of them to make sure that they will be back and productive next year?
Probably resign Trent Williams. And the rest of the line is still good. They won't be terrible without him. But I think after he missed the entire year, the season before, he was the highest rated offensive lineman in all of football last year, kind of a linchpin. So, I mean, most of the roster is going to stay the same, like you said. So assuming everybody is healthy, then they just bring back, their best offensive lineman, and, they're in a pretty good spot, aren't they?
Yeah, I think so as well. And I think it's important that we just say, like, just because this is the starting lineup, they're definitely going to have some additions to the roster that even I think will happen. So, maybe adding a guy to the receiver room, maybe adding an offensive guard that they think can step around and play one of the interior positions, adding probably a running back because guys like McKinnon and Coleman are going to be hitting the market. But really, a lot of this is going to be just keeping the same guys in place and riding it out because they have a talented team and it's just about health. Looking at the defensive side of things, again, it's all 49ers. We're looking at Javon Kinlaw and Eric Armstead at defensive tackle, Bosa and Ford at the edge spots. For linebacker, we got Greenlaw, Warner, and Azeez Al-Shaair. We talked about that. We said if they have Tony Fields step up and play really well in camp, then he could be the starter. There's some other young options on the roster as well that could step in and play. Cornerback room, we have them going Verrett, Mosley, and Jamar Taylor back from his torn ACL. And then for safety spots, we got Jimmy Ward and Jaquiski Tart. Obviously, guys like Patrick Jones are going to get snaps. Guys like Ifeatu Melifonwu are going to come in. Ahkello Witherspoon is going to get some rotations as well, obviously. So this isn't just, this is the same defense. They're just going to automatically be great. Guys like Kerry Hyder, guys like Richard Sherman, it sucks to lose them. But the 49ers still have plenty of talent, and it's just about staying healthy, keeping Bosa healthy, keeping the defensive line going and keeping pressure, getting the secondary to have that presence that they had from last year with a healthy unit. The 49ers are very much a good team no matter what. It's just how many games they can actually win. Brian, looking at this roster, what do you think the outlook is for the 49ers if they were to follow this blueprint for their next season ahead? And from a betting perspective, what would you advise?
Yeah, I mean, they're definitely a playoff team, right? And at least a playoff caliber team. They happen to play in a really tough division where really three teams, anyone except Arizona, could conceivably win the division, I guess, dependent on how, everybody plays. But if the 49ers are a little bit like the Cowboys we discussed last week, like things went haywire so early in the season that whatever your expectations were going into last season, they were immediately derailed. So health is like the number one factor for the 49ers over everything. And if they maintain that, I mean, they could win 9 or 10 games pretty easily, right? So there's really not too many holes on the team at all. It's really just about staying healthy and adding to them. But I would bet when the odds come out for this, I might not bet on the 49ers to win the NFC West, but I would maybe think about their win total getting to 9 or 10 and making the playoffs again.
Absolutely. And, looking at some of these guys, you could argue that guys like Nick Bosa, Fred Warner, they could potentially make the case to be the best players at their position in the league already. Do you think that the 49ers have a drop-off without a coach like Saleh, or do you think that the roster talent is just that high to where they're going to keep things rolling?
Yeah, I mean, we're not inside the room. If you judge the way guys who play for Saleh talk about him, it makes me think that there will be a loss in the room. Now, that doesn't mean that the defense has to regress, though, right? Because Robert Saleh didn't put on pads. He didn't go play. He did get the most out of a unit that was banged up from the very beginning. So, maybe having the same exact expectations would be a little bit unfair, but I think that's really a thing that irons itself out in camp and early in the season. By the time we get to the middle of the year, I think we're just going to be like, wow, this 49ers defense is really good.
Absolutely. And Brian probably most happy about Saleh leaving because he is now riding the ship in New York, going to lead the Jets to the Super Bowl in year one. We're looking forward to it.
Yeah, between Robert Saleh and Deshaun Watson, it's all happening.
So now we come back and we talk about the next team that's in place, a team that probably shares the same sympathy for San Francisco because they've been dealing with it for many years. The Los Angeles Chargers and the rampant injury history. Now, though, plenty of intrigue with the Chargers after this past season where Justin Herbert lit up the field, lit up the league. There's plenty of talent on this roster as well. Getting guys like Derwin James back and healthy is absolutely huge. You look at some of the options on the offensive line, and that's really where the concerns come from. What do you think the next step is for the Chargers, and how do you think they accomplish that next step?
Well, their next step is kind of not finding ways to lose games, besides being healthy, right? Excuse me, not finding a way to lose games. Now, some of that we can blame on Anthony Lynn a little bit. We know how some of those Chargers games ended last year, but this is a team that lost 9 games, and I think 8 of them were within one score. They got beat like 45-0 by the Patriots. But other than that, so like they're right there in basically every single game that they play, right? So this is another team that just that doesn't have that many holes when everybody's healthy. It's really just a matter of like coming down to execution. But they have a new coach. They are going to have a second-year quarterback, and they're going to have probably the highest expectations in terms of like making a jump out of anybody.
I think so as well. When you have a player like Justin Herbert that just demolishes the league really for rookie standards, people are going to now be expecting them to take a huge step. I'm sure a lot of people are going to be wanting to put some wagers on Justin Herbert for MVP because of the sophomore trend that has been happening. And I'm sure a lot of people are looking to see if Coach Staley can take this team to the playoffs. And how you get there is with some good drafts and some good signings. So let's jump into the mock draft part of this segment. Jalen Mayfield in the first round. He's not my offensive tackle up in this range, but I do think with his athleticism, with his upside, with his ability to drop into sets, you see a lot of that upside that NFL teams love. The combination of strength, size, and athleticism brings Mayfield to the Chargers early in this draft. I think another guy that I'm lower on that could potentially be the pick here is a guy like Alex Leatherwood, who has some raw difficulties as a blocker, but that athleticism is what coaches love. They are willing to bet on themselves to really bring those guys to the next level. So look out for a offensive tackle pick here. Another position that could be addressed, which I have them going for in the second round, is cornerback. For me, I have him going Asante Samuel Jr. in the second round, a guy that I love and think that could he potentially be one of the top corners in this class? Absolutely. I think he might be a first-round talent for me in terms of ratings once I'm all said and done with his report. What I love about him is despite his size at 5'10", he plays like an absolute star on the outside. I think he's going to stick around on the outside. A lot of people want to project him as a slot corner due to his size, but you look at guys like Jair Alexander, guys like Tre'Davious White. The size doesn't matter as long as you can play, and Asante Samuel Jr. can absolutely play. I think he's going to be a stud. Look out for him to be a star in the league for many years. Personally, because of his dad, I'm really hoping that he becomes a Patriot because I am absolutely a huge fan of the Samuels. In the third round, I have the Chargers going Marlon Tuipulotu. You look at the defensive line, and yes, there's guys like Jerry Tillery, there's guys like Justin Jones, and obviously Linval Joseph in the middle, but I think the defensive line spot could still use some upside. So getting a guy like Tuipulotu who has some upside and can provide at least depth to that defensive line room would be absolutely huge. Getting a guy to compete with Jones for that spot, I think, would be a great acquisition. With that next third round pick, I have him going Trey Hill out of Georgia, athletic interior offensive lineman with a very nice frame and base. I think the biggest issue that I had with Trey Hill was a lot of times he would have plays where he just had a bad snap. So maybe he makes a move over to guard. There's definitely some other issues with his game, though. So, he's got some growing pains that we'll go through. But for the Chargers, they have some issues on the offensive line. Get some talent in there. Get some protection for Justin Herbert, because you don't want to keep him rolling out every play and having issues in terms of just being able to be comfortable in the pocket. In the fourth round, I have him going Quincy Roche, edge out of Miami, Florida. You saw him at Temple, and then he went to Miami, Florida, and did it again. I think this is someone that is very athletic, works well as a stand-up rusher, which is expected now for the Chargers to run a 3-4. Bosa and Nwosu are going to be a very dynamic duo at the edge spot, but adding another piece like Roche as a stand-up rusher could be absolutely huge for the Chargers to really take advantage of the opportunity to present a dominant defense, which I think they could very well have. In the fifth round, I have them going DeMonte Coxey, a guy that I love at the wide receiver spot out of Memphis. He's long, he's lanky, but he's athletic, and he makes some great plays. I don't want to diss anyone, but there was a lot of bad passes for this guy. There were limited opportunities to create yards after catch because he was stuck adjusting for passes that were behind him, ruining all momentum. I think his yards after catch ability is severely underrated, and with a better system, with a better quarterback, I think he could be in a great spot to really splash as a late rookie pick. In the sixth round, I have the Chargers going tight end and linebacker. With the first pick, I have him going Kenny Yeboah, tight end out of Ole Miss. I think he's someone that put together some great performances for Ole Miss, and I think there's going to be hype surrounding his name. I don't think that he's going to be the star-studded corner, but I think our tight end. But I do think that there's plenty of potential here to where he could step in and maybe take that tight end 2 spot under Hunter Henry. And I think he's a good enough blocker and receiver to where he could provide an enticement to teams that are looking for tight end depth. With the next sixth round pick, I have the Chargers going Tuf Borland, linebacker out of Ohio State. This is your classic 2002 type linebacker. Tuf Borland is a guy that is, 6 foot, 220, but he's just an absolute run stuffer, probably limited athletically. So the frame is the issue because he doesn't match up with his play style, but he is smart, nice processor, very good in the run game. Look for him to be a 6th-round pick and hopefully contribute as a special teams player and rotational linebacker to help stop runs. And then with that last pick, the Chargers go Darius Hutcherson, offensive lineman out of South Carolina. Get some depth pieces on that line, whether you have him at guard or center, doesn't matter. See if he can get a spot on the roster, and then, with time, maybe see if he can take a spot that really gets play time for this team. Brian, Chargers are obviously on the right step with a great season from Justin Herbert, and there's plenty of talent on this roster, but there's plenty of needs as well. What do you think of this draft in terms of addressing those needs, and what do you think could be improved on for the Chargers in order to take that next step?
Yeah, you nailed it with the offensive line. Obviously, there's nothing that bothers me more. Maybe it's because I'm a Jets fan and we haven't had a franchise quarterback in decades and decades and decades, but it bothers me when teams have great quarterback play but don't do a good job at protecting them. I'm going to give you a little stat on the offensive line for Justin Herbert. He had the second most, according to Pro Football Focus, what they call quick pressures on his dropbacks in the NFL. 28% of the times he dropped back, there was pressure on him quickly. The only quarterback who had to deal with more of that was Sam Darnold, over 29%. Second worst in the league. I would really be doing exactly what you suggested and taking a tackle with the very first pick. They have to protect not just last year's draft pick, but their franchise for the next however many years. And I guess the only other thing that I would say is I might take a wide receiver a bit earlier. I might take one maybe early on day 2. with one of those third-round picks, not because it's the biggest need necessarily right now, kind of like what you were saying about the 49ers and the quarterback, but maybe they could be in the conversation for the Bateman, Wallace, Tamari, and Terry group there, and not taking one too early, obviously. But I just think that the more weapons and the more protection, the better. They're going to win games with their offense. And then also, you have an edge rusher in there. I mean, that's something that I wrote down. Ingram's a bit older. Obviously, they have Bosa, but they do have the 3 picks on day 2. So if they got 2 days in, they address the O-line and the edge and maybe a wide receiver, I'd be really happy with that as a Chargers fan.
Absolutely. And now we take a look at the offensive side of things for the Chargers. First at QB, Justin Herbert, obviously going to be sticking around. Austin Eckler at running back. The receiver room, Keenan Allen, Mike Williams, and bringing back Jalen Guyton. At tight end, Hunter Henry. That is going to be a scary unit as long as all guys are healthy. Obviously, there's questions about Eckler, questions about Keenan Allen, questions about Hunter Henry, but there's so much talent in the skill group room at QB, at running back, at the receiver spots, and at tight end. As long as they can retain these guys, I think they are absolutely going to be in store for a great season offensively. Now we look at the offensive line, though. Jalen Mayfield at left tackle. I have them signing Cam Robinson from Jacksonville. He was their left tackle. I have him being brought in to play left guard for the Chargers. I think he fits their mold of an offensive lineman. And then Dan Feeney at center. He did well enough to where I think you ride him out, give him one more year. Obviously, we had draft picks like Hutcherson and Trey Hill that could potentially take the spot if Feeney struggles. But I think you let Feeney ride out that spot right now. At guard, Try Turner. And then at right tackle, Brian Bulaga. The biggest thing is getting guys like Turner and Bulaga healthy, hoping that Robinson and Mayfield show enough to really hold down that left side. The Chargers offensively were able to produce last year, but the offensive line is definitely something that needs improved on. Brian, looking at this offense and looking at just the new coaching staff with the Rams system kind of being brought in, what do you think of this team and what do you think their potential is on offense?
Yeah, with a little bit of health and help up front, like you were just mentioning, they can be, obviously the second best offense in that division with the Chiefs, but one of the best offenses in the AFC. I mean, they put up a ton of points. They scored over 30 points in a handful of games last year. I don't have offhand exactly how many, but they can win just by outscoring teams if they block a little bit. Their defense doesn't have to be shut down in any way, and that's not really a luxury that most teams have. As long as they can protect their quarterback, they're going to be one of the best offenses in football if they didn't even add another player to skill position.
And now we look at the defensive side of things. Jerry Tillery, Linval Joseph, and Justin Jones at the defensive line spot. We talk about Tui Pelotu in that mock draft, so he's added into that rotation as well. On the edge spots, Joey Bosa and Uchenna Nwosu. I love Nwosu because he's a very hybrid type defender, can drop into coverage, can rush the passer. Bosa, obviously one of the best edge rushers in the NFL. At linebacker, we got Kenneth Murray, and we bring back Denzel Perriman. Obviously, there's guys like Drew Tranquil and Kaiser White that can come into this system and play. At corner, I have him keeping Casey Hayward, Asante Samuel as a second corner, and Chris Harris Jr. in the slot. And then at safety, we got Rayshawn Jenkins and Derwin James, Nasir Adderley obviously in there as well. This defense, with a guy like Coach Staley, could be dangerous. And I know that it's been something that has been hyped for a lot of times, but, injuries to guys like Derwin James, injuries to guys like Joey Bosa over the past few years have really put this defense on question mark because we haven't gotten to see it at full health. Assuming we do, though, assuming that everyone is able to stay healthy for the most part, Coach Staley is able to put in his system. What do you think of this Chargers defense?
Well, we just saw what Staley did with the Rams, and they can really rush the passer. Now, part of that is because of who they have, but they have Bosa, and if they added another guy on the edge, or at least had whatever guys produce on the edge and were able to stay healthy, they can be, obviously they're not going to be as good as the Rams, but they could be more than good enough to complement the offense that they have. The latter part of the year, their defense actually played, somewhat decent. I think they had a couple of maybe hiccups in there, but they really didn't play that poorly, and they were dealing with injuries, basically the whole time, like you said. And your draft plan has them taking a cornerback early. They probably will do that. So I would anticipate the defense being a little bit better than it was last year, adding in the fact that they're going to have a new coach that comes from a proven defensive system.
So looking at this Chargers team, obviously, I think a lot of people are kind of questioning the same thing. Is it just who's second in the AFC West, or do you think if the Chargers have some proper dominoes fall in the right direction, that they could full health beat a full health Chiefs team and win the AFC West?
Yeah, the key word you just said was full health, because what I was going to say is, if one of the dominoes to fall is Patrick Mahomes, then they can definitely win the division. I probably wouldn't put my money on that, although there's definitely a healthy payout for it. The Chargers are about, over 5 times your money if you want to pick them to win the AFC West, and there's no value on the Chiefs. But, this is a playoff team. This should be a playoff team. Like I said before, they have probably the excitement level for Chargers fans is probably, between seasons is much higher than your average team, because they went 7-9, but they were in basically every single game, right? So if I was a fan, I'd be looking at 10-6 and a playoff team. This team should definitely be over 500, and they should be in the hunt for the playoffs for the entire season. Last year was 7-9, and they still had to win, I think, the last 4 games, and not 5 out of 6, the last 4 games to even get there. They should really not have that drought in the middle of the season. They should be sort of controlling their own destiny as we get into December.
Absolutely. And, I really love this Chargers team, and I think it's important that they keep building it because there's just so much talent here. Obviously, there's pieces that maybe with time you're going to be looking at trying to rotate kind of out because of age, and you're looking to add some more talent. Having a guy like Asante Samuel Jr., I feel like he's an interesting piece because I think he can be an outside corner, and I think he'll be very good at it. So he could maybe, go left and replace Casey Hayward on this graphic, or, he can maybe go right and be that Chris Harris Jr. replacement. Both corners, not necessarily young. So in the next few years, we probably do see them both gone. The Chargers will have to address corner in this offseason one way or another, maybe even double dip the position. But, having young pieces that can step up and hopefully fulfill those positions that are now currently fine but will need replacement is definitely going to be huge for the Chargers to continue what should be a very strong roster build. And I think guys like Asante Samuel Jr. and hopefully the guys that I also mocked in this draft will be able to do that. I really love the Chargers, though, and I think the upside is definitely there for them to be competitive this year, and make playoffs is definitely the standard. But I wouldn't be surprised if, they split with the Chiefs and are right there in the hunt. I don't think the Chiefs lose the division, but I do think, Chiefs going 12-4 and Chargers going 11-5 and making it close is definitely very feasible.
Yeah, for what it's worth, they played the Chiefs the last game of the season, and the Chiefs rested a lot of guys, so the Chargers won big. But early in the season, in week 2, the Chargers lost to them, in overtime, and in a great game. So I mean, they're an inconsistent team, is what they are, because they can lose to the Chiefs in overtime, but they still gave up 28 points to the Jets, who were completely inept, right? So they're just, week in, week out, maybe a little bit you didn't know what to expect last year, but there were enough positive signs, and they have enough cap space that the team should be even better than they were last year. I mean, this is a playoff team in the AFC, I think.
Absolutely. And, I like Anthony Lynn, but I think there is very clear examples of moments where they just absolutely looked ridiculous. Like just poor clock management, poor roster management, poor refinement in the game plan that just absolutely came to bite them so many times over the course of the season. So the Chargers, with a coach that at least is prepared, in terms of making sure the right units are running out there all the time, getting the exact 11 guys that are supposed to be out there. That's already going to be huge for them. Calling some simple plays, not trying to spike the ball at the one with time expiring. It's just there's going to be small changes, and obviously they aren't just automatically going to be in those same spots. But I do think that those close games were just the constant kind of illustration of Anthony Lynn's career, and it sucks for him. But at the same time, if you're a Chargers fan, if you really believe in Brandon Staley to maybe make this defense better, if you believe in Coach O'Connell to make this offense better, then you should be expecting both winning those one-possession games and also never being in those situations where you're in that one-possession game. So the sky is really the limit for the Chargers based on what we saw from Justin Herbert, what we saw from a lot of these guys when they're healthy, and what this coaching staff brings in. I know that, you don't want to set the standard like, oh, we have to beat the Chiefs. And that's like, just if you don't do that, you're disappointed. But, having that season out of Justin Herbert as a rookie is absolutely huge. And while Mahomes is a great quarterback and while the Chiefs are a great team, they aren't untouchable. So if you can generate pressure on this team for Mahomes, and if you can just beat out some of these other good teams like the Raiders, and I think the Broncos are good as well, this is going to be a tough division. And obviously you can't just put all your focus on Mahomes and the Chiefs, but I do think that you can win the AFC West with some strong wins and hopefully, some good luck.
Yeah, it does take luck because you're going to need them to lose a game here and there to somebody or whatever. But I thought that part of Justin Herbert and that offensive success was almost in spite of Anthony Lynn. And I don't want to place it all at his feet, but some of those time management situations have to be laid on the coach a little bit. I think that's why Chargers fans are so excited. It was like, well, look how this kid played and how much this team succeeded almost in spite of some of the things that you kind of couldn't forecast ahead of time. Now, maybe with some competency from the top down, put everybody in a position to succeed. What can we do then?
Absolutely. And obviously, if you're a Chargers fan, the biggest thing is just keeping these guys healthy, getting Keenan Allen for a full season, Austin Eckler for a full season, Hunter Henry for a full season. And that's how things get going. We wish you luck, Chargers fans. Obviously, me and Brian here, we may have our biases. I'm wearing a Patriots shirt right now as we speak, but we want to see these teams at full health. We want to see you guys have success. Even though we want to see the Jets go undefeated, Patriots undefeated, we still want to see you guys have good years and at least be at full health to where, there's no questions about what happened for you guys. So we're wishing you guys luck, both the 49ers and the Chargers, who had some rough luck over these past, few weeks of football. So good luck to you guys. But next week, we got some serious business to talk about. The Minnesota Vikings and the New England Patriots. Going to be very exciting on Monday. We look forward to it. First and foremost, we want to say thank you to LandryFootball.com for the platform to talk football. We want to thank all the people who tuned in and all the comments in the comment section. We appreciate you guys very much. And Brian, for anyone that's looking for a place to bet on their season predictions or just any daily games, tell them where they can find a place to do so.
Yeah, if you're looking to bet on anything NFL related, the draft, futures, you want Justin Herbert for MVP, plus 2,200. Visit bonusseeker.com. Find out, even if you want to bet on other sports, you can find out what each sportsbook has to offer. Check out a few different options and sign up through there. We'll get you all hooked up with a nice little bonus.
March Madness is coming up, so definitely get yourself ready for it. Brian, if you had to say just any team that's going to win it all, give me a college.
March Madness. Oh, I'm going to say Baylor. I'm going to say Baylor only because Gonzaga's ranked number one. It's too easy to go with the number one team, so I'll go with Baylor.
I got you. My bias is leaning Illinois, but obviously I don't think it's going to happen. If I had to pick a team, I'm leaning a team like Baylor as well. But we'll see you guys on Monday where we talk about it. Destination Draft Day for all things pro football, college football, and NFL draft. We will take care of it. It's a long road to draft day, but we got you covered. Michael Rockman, Brian Sosa, thank you guys so much. Take care.